Hey friends, my name is Amelia. I have been traveling the world solo for the past 8 years, and I am starting this YouTube channel to talk about all my incredible travel stories as well as my healing journey from something really crazy that happened to me as a young adult. So grab yourself your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's get right into it. So the reason why I'm making this video and why I decided to make this YouTube channel, the original reason was because I wanted to share my travels. I've been traveling full time. Almost full time for the past 8 years. I've been traveling solo the whole time as well. However, I realized that I can't tell my story and talk about my travels without telling my entire story. Because when I was younger, something happened to me that completely changed me and changed the trajectory of my life. And because it's my day off, I'm also going to be multitasking, and I have this floral arrangement that I got for my birthday. My birthday was a week and a half ago, I think now. I'm just going to recut it and put it into some mason jars. So I thought it would be fun and maybe a little bit more interesting to do some floral arrangements or rearranging while I'm telling you my traumatic life story. So I am originally from Whistler, which is on the west coast of Canada. Some of you may have heard of it because it's a pretty well-known ski resort. It was a very magical place to grow up, always surrounded by nature. Remember, I used to love just being outside, and I had a very vivid imagination, so I loved playing outside in the trees. I used to sit in the trees and sing to them. I used to collect rocks. I was also very artistic, so I remember so clearly the first drawing I ever made was like I was sitting at our countertop that evening, and my dad was in the kitchen with me, and I was drawing rocks, and that was my first drawing that I ever made, and I was so proud of myself. To this day, I'm still obsessed with rocks. One of my favorite things to do when I'm traveling actually is visit megalithic sites where they have those big stone structures that you're like, how could they possibly have moved them? It would be difficult with today's technology. So I was very artistic. I was quite quiet and shy. I was really in tune with my intuition from a very young age, which is really interesting. But it was just a really magical place to grow up, and I'm really grateful that I had the childhood I have. Until until I get to the end of high school. I think I'm actually gonna start cutting these flowers. Here I am just standing here yapping. Unfortunately, I think these two are gonna have to go. Oh, I think actually this one's probably fine. So during my final year of high school, my mom had noticed that I had been really tired and just feeling really burnt out all the time. And I just hadn't been feeling myself. And even though I was really athletic and fit, my tummy got really bloated. It kind of looks like I was pregnant. I was really excited and happy because it was near the end of high school. My friends and I were planning to go to Australia for a year. We'd been saving all year. We were having lots of grad parties, which were a really big thing at my high school. I don't know if it's the same for you, but when you're in your final year, you have lots of different themed parties. So we were having lots of grad parties, and it was super fun. And I was just really excited for the summer. And I remember it was my final 2 weeks of high school. I was studying for my final exams, and it was the morning after my friend's birthday party. So obviously I was a little hungover. Okay, I was a teenager, so I wasn't feeling great. And I remember I was laying in bed, and my stomach was really, my abdomen, my whole abdomen, not just my stomach. It wasn't just nausea, the normal hangover symptoms. My abdomen was extremely bloated, and it was getting so painful that I couldn't pee. By the way, if you're squeamish about any medical stuff, maybe don't watch this video. Just a trigger warning. I wouldn't watch it if you're really squeamish about medical stuff. So I was in so much pain, and I forgot about this, but my mom told me this recently. I texted my mom. She was downstairs. It was too hard to get up to actually go downstairs and talk to her, but I texted my mom, and I was like, I'm not well. I'm in so much pain. I actually can't move. Do you guys think, like, are those salvageable, those end bits? I think it's still okay. I'm still gonna use it. Okay. So I actually texted her and I was like, I'm in so much pain, like I cannot move. You need to take me to the clinic. Mind you, the clinic in Whistler, the clinic in Whistler deals with mainly sports-related injuries, usually from skiing and snowboarding, mountain biking. That's kind of like what they're limited to, and family practice. So I went in there and they decided to do a CAT scan, which is, they didn't have an MRI machine at the time. So they're like, we're gonna do a CAT scan. And it was physically painful. Like, I cannot tell you how painful for them to move me from the rolling gurney onto the x-ray table. Like, so they did a scan, they noticed a mass in my abdomen. So they're like, oh, we think it's probably an ectopic pregnancy, but we're not sure, so we're gonna have to send you to Lionsgate Hospital, which is in North Vancouver. That's the closest hospital that you can send someone if they're coming from like Whistler, Pemberton, or Squamish. So they decided to send me down to Lionsgate, and I wasn't really super aware of what was going on. I was just like, it was just such a shock from going from studying exams to like then being sent to the hospital. So they sent me down to Lionsgate. They did an MRI. They thought that it was probably like a cyst or a mass on my ovaries. So they scheduled me for surgery, obviously, because if someone's not peeing and they can't, it's like painful to be physically moved, something's wrong. The next morning, they were prepping me for surgery, and I remember 2 male doctors came into my room, and they were basically like, so we're gonna do surgery. We think there's a cyst on one of your ovaries. That's what we believe it is. So we're going to have to make an incision, obviously. And basically my options were to either have the classic like C-section scar, like where you get it right here. But they said, you know, if it's not on your ovaries and it turns out to be somewhere else, like we might have to cut lengthwise as well, which meant like if it wasn't on my ovaries, I would have ended up with a scar here and a scar here. Or you can just get an incision that goes up and down and will be visible for your entire life. So, and I was 17 and I was having to decide which way to get a permanent scar on my body. It was really overwhelming. Fortunately, I've always had a really strong intuition as a kid, and even though it was a really hard decision to make, especially as like a young woman / girl who, you know, is aware of how her body is perceived by other people, my intuition was telling me to go with a lengthways scar. And it's a good thing I did, because when I did go in for surgery, about halfway through, or I think 3 hours in, the surgeon came out to talk to my parents. He was ghost white. He looked terrified, and he was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what's in your daughter's abdomen, so I have to pass the surgery off to somebody else. My parents were like pretty distraught at hearing that. So they passed off the surgery to a wonderful surgeon. They figured out that it was a mass attached to my small intestine, which the technical term is duplicated bowel, and it is super rare. I'm in a 1 percentile of people who have this condition, but basically what they think is I was born with 2 sets of intestines, and then one kind of just like grew into this mass, which eventually was cutting off my vital organs, which is why I had to have surgery. So fun. Okay, it's not. This is actually really serious. The other aspect to what was happening to me was that I had the week previous watched this movie with Hayden Christensen and Jessica Alba called Awake, because I was obsessed with both of them in the 2000s, okay? It was basically about a guy who goes in for surgery, goes under general anesthesia, and wakes up but is paralyzed and unable to move. So my primary concern when I was going in for surgery was not that I was like whether or not I would survive. It was whether or not I was going to wake up during the procedure and be conscious and feel everything that was going on but be unable to say anything. That was my biggest fear. So I remember I asked the general anesthesian multiple times, what the chances were of me being awake during the surgery. And he's like, that's not going to happen. You're going to be fine. Sure enough, I don't remember a thing. But I do. It's just so funny that that's what I was concerned about. I think that actually ended up being a really good distraction because if I'd been contemplating whether I was going to survive or not, that probably would have been worse. So thanks, Hayden, for that. Anyway, a beautiful man is always a good distraction. So I made it through the surgery. It's really, really strange waking up from general anesthesia. I think the first, because I had ended up having another surgery. We're getting to that. I remember waking up and just like thanking the doctor, the nurses, whoever was there with me when they woke me up from the anesthesia. But you like I could hardly open my eyes. You're barely aware of what's going on. That's actually not the end of what happened. I didn't just like have surgery and then recover. I did have a complication. Plus there was a question because I had a cyst or a tumor essentially of whether or not it was cancerous. But again, I had a really strong intuition about things and I kind of just knew that it wasn't cancer. Like I wasn't worried about it. I just knew that I was going to be okay. So I think it was, I can't remember when we got the results back from the cyst, but it turned out it wasn't cancer, which I'm so lucky. But yeah, basically what it was a cyst, a 20 centimeter cyst attached to my small intestine. The way it was described to me was it was the size of a 6-pound baby. So that's what I had in my abdomen. No wonder I was in so much pain. I was really sick, like vomiting a lot when after the surgery. And they're like, oh, it's normal. It could be from the general anesthesia. So because I was getting sick, it was putting pressure on my stitches. So they're like, okay, we're going to have to put a tube like down your throat so that it just like comes up and into this machine. We don't want you ripping your stitches. So this was terrible. They had to put a tube up my nostril. It's this nostril because it's bigger still. They put a tube up my nostril and down my throat, which you can imagine that probably feels really fun to have done to you. My mom said I looked like an elephant. Actually really funny. So I had that for a while and I was going to then have to get my staples out. So I actually asked them to put that off for a day because I had this like crazy intuition and I just had a feeling something was going to happen. Also, look at this water. That really needed to get changed. Okay, let me just give that a clean. I've got these two, so I might put some in here and then do a small one in here so I have more flowers in my room. I think that's what's happening now. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was really unwell, but they didn't know exactly what was wrong. They just thought I was responding to general anesthesia. I ended up having my staples taken out. And later that night, I was getting sick again. And my stitches came apart. Yeah, I pushed like the call button for the nurses. They were just so busy and overwhelmed all the time. Like it took them a while to come. My mom wouldn't let me look at it. It was terrible. Yeah, it was actually really upsetting. Yeah, so what happened was I had a wound infection. So they had to clean it out that night and then they actually were gonna have to do another surgery, which I was not happy about because I was still like, what if I wake up during general anesthesia? You're saying I have to do round 2 with that possibility? Anyway, they had a specialist come in. They had a vac machine put in to clean up the infection. That's basically where they stuff foam into the wound and they attach a suction tube with tape. And it sucks it out into a machine, which makes farting noises. And funny enough, so I had that for a few weeks, but I remember changing it for the first time because there's like adhesive tape around your wound and they have to take it off to unhook like the machine and take the foam out. The first time I cried for like hours. It wasn't just the pain, it was just like, that was like my breaking point. Like I was really strong and I was like, I'm over it. Like I'm so over this. Like, why is this happening to me? Yeah, so that was like, I don't remember the timeline exactly, but that was really bad. yeah, that's where I was like, I'm so over this. Plus, like, I was having really bad nightmares while I was in hospital. My parents were like so nice to like stay. I always had one of them, my mom or my dad, staying with me. It was mostly my mom. But one night I was by myself because my mom was sleeping in a chair. Like, she needed to go sleep in a bed for one night. And I remember I just like cried myself to sleep because it was a lot. But luckily, while I had the vac machine, I was able to go home to Whistler and actually spend some time at home. One thing that did happen to me during the surgery, I turned 18 in the hospital a few days after my surgery happened, and my friends like drove down to visit me. Like, so happy to see all of them. It was so cute. But they brought me gifts and flowers and presents. My cousin came to visit me too that day, and yeah, it was just really nice seeing them all. And then yeah, I was able to go home while I had the vac machine in, and so that was really nice as well. I lost 20 pounds too while in hospital because I couldn't eat, obviously, and I wasn't allowed to drink water for the first week. I could only have like water sponges in my mouth to like wet my mouth. That was hard. That was actually really hard because I love drinking water. So the vac machine, it cleaned out my wound. I had to go in for a second surgery. It was a minor surgery. So they sent me in for minor surgery. Fortunately, that went well. No problems thereafter. I was on tons of antibiotics. They just needed to keep an eye on it, basically. But I spent most of the first half of summer recovering. And I think the hardest part, it wasn't like obviously the stomach problems that come after you have so much scar tissue in your small intestine, in your abdomen, the trauma of it all. I think the thing that was the hardest was that it was so isolating. Of course, like, my parents were there for me. They spent a lot of time with me in hospital, which I'm grateful for that they could do that. Well, that's turning out quite nicely. You like it? Yeah. But it was just an isolating experience because nobody knows what it's actually like to be you going through that. Like, nobody's in your head experiencing the nightmares with you every night. Just the physical, emotional, and mental trauma afterwards. It's just isolating. Sorry, I'm pulling this up. Okay, I got my new water. And then I did actually get better. I think it was by like mid-August. I was able to like go out again and like kind of be normal. Thankfully, I could still go to Australia. Still went to Australia with my friends. I ended up staying there for 6 months. So I still got to travel because I've been dreaming about traveling to Australia for so long. And then I decided while I was there that I wanted to study massage therapy. It's always been something that I did with my family and friends, but I decided to study it in my massage school, which I did also in Whistler. I learned about nutrition. I found this book, Healing with Whole Foods. So I actually decided to transition into a plant-based diet to help heal my gut. So I was learning about how to heal my gut. I'm probably going to make a part 2 about how, like, what my healing journey actually looked like what I did nutrition-wise, how I like spiritually and mentally and emotionally recovered from the surgery. And so in hindsight, as difficult as that time in my life was, it basically sent me on this whole journey of inner work and self-discovery that I would not have done if I'd not had this surgery, which is why I am actually grateful that it happened, because I don't even know who I would be right now if that whole experience hadn't happened to me. I don't know what kind of life I would be living. And I think that I'm actually better for it. That is my life story. And I hope you enjoyed watching me rearrange my flowers. These are the flowers. I think it turned out pretty well. These ones. Anyway, if you watched this whole video, thank you so much for just being here and listening to my story. I really appreciate you, and I feel really good about finally telling my story in its entirety, because I think telling this story will make what I talk about and where I choose to travel make a lot more sense, if you know what I mean. I hope you get what I mean. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one.